Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. You're probably seeing this somewhere around, if not on, Thanksgiving Day. So I'd like to start first and foremost like this way. Guys, I surely appreciate each and every one of you. Feel very, very blessed this year. Very thankful. Got a laundry list of things to be thankful for. And a lot of it business-wise is related to directly related to everybody that is watching this, and or the clients around the country that, let's be honest, this industry that I'm in, it's kind of it's a saturated situation right now, right? There's a lot of consultants out there, a lot of folks doing what I'm doing. I wasn't the first one to start doing this, and since then it's kind of blown up, right? There's a lot of great information out there, a lot of great folks, not taking anything from anybody. But I feel each and every year as this industry grows, I feel more blessed and thankful when folks do choose me. And like I said, because there's a lot of options. So first and foremost, thanks everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays in general. Kicking off the holiday season, and it's a big part of the year for a lot of family, and maybe hunting ties to that. Michigan, some seasons that are still, maybe even the gun season, kind of more of a family tradition hunt wise, seasons are still open, and it's just a great time to be in the woods and maybe get together and harvest some does and just relax. Maybe the pressure's off a little bit. Guys, we're going to talk about this one here. I just labeled this the fourth quarter hunts, right? Depending on where you're at in the country, you could be halfway through the year, you could be, into this fourth quarter. So like I always say, tie this to your exact time. But here, like in central Kentucky where I'm at, guys, we are going into what I would refer to as the fourth quarter. The rut, we peak around, we're going to talk about something to do with that today, but we peak around November 13th. Here is what I found over here in central Kentucky over the last 4 years of having the farm. And originally where I'm from up there in mid-Michigan, we were peaking around the 7th or 8th of November, something like that. So if you're in the south, maybe you're just peaking now around the Thanksgiving time, or maybe you're 2 weeks from the peak, right? Depending on where you're at in the country. But with that being said, a lot of these strategies are kind of a fourth quarter mentality. So as you can see in here, I always do a video each year that's kind of labeled that Hail Mary, right? That Hail Mary isn't on here yet because I don't really feel that it's quite that time to get, that desperate maybe, right? So we are looking at trying to be that farm where a lot of these bucks, maybe it's a mature buck or a buck that was on the property, and because of the drought, and or he's just a buck that likes to roam, right? Left the property. This time of the year, all of a sudden you start seeing whatever did make it through like a gun season, you start seeing that rut effect start to tail off, that first rut, strong hold tail off or wear off, and you start getting these bucks back in to your area. And one thing to watch, guys, is the mentality of how those bucks, when they come back into the property, how they react. Because let's be honest, if you are in a spot now where I'm at here in Kentucky, nowhere near the deer, harvest and or pressure, like Michigan or Wisconsin, but those deer, when they left, had a bunch of other, let's say, competition, right? Maybe some other deer in their age class. And when they come back, what I find is it's really neat to kind of watch how they navigate the farm when they do come back, because they're anticipating those deer still being there. That shows you the importance of having that those areas, those scrapes, which turn into communal scrapes like we've always talked. That's the importance of laying that much scent down on your property. If they're coming back and they're knowing that, you can watch kind of their body language. They're reading that. They're making sure if that older buck or that boss buck is still there, being so run down from the rut, they really aren't looking for a fight, right? So if that door has been open, you'll see they slide in, and all of a sudden they go back into this early season mentality where a lot of their mentality switches to food. You know, a lot of these bucks around the country have dropped 20 to 30, maybe more percent of their body weight running during the rut, and they are looking to start putting some weight back on and rebounding to, rebounding from that weight loss from the rut. So hopefully your food plots are still strong, and we can get them. We're able to feed here in Kentucky, so I continue my feed programs on my food plots. The food plots actually look great right now, way better than they did earlier because we actually got rain, and so we should help those deer rebound. What comes with that, guys? The reason I touched on that is this late season hunt is what you want to implement. We try to take the AM approach back out just like we did in the early season, and the reason for that is we didn't apply pressure too early in the early season, and we don't want to apply that pressure now because we've got those bucks returning. And let's be honest, when they're in that feed pattern, most of the time they're back in those beds before or right at daylight. So resort back to those PM hunts unless something is making some major mistakes. And the second part of this starts to turn in where you might get some does back on their feet earlier, and they're cruising looking for those does during the second rut. Take the pressure off, guys, is the big thing. The why part of this, the where, focus on those food sources, right? If you do have your food plots are left, hopefully you've got some rye, or if your brassicas did take a major hit, you've got that rye working for you. Look at those situations, guys. Shot plots. I'm still not the guy that's going to tell you, even this time of the year, to sit on top of those food plots because you can't get away from them, right? Right now, they are so pressured that it takes just, you think it was a deal breaker early in the season. They've been so pressured in one or stick crack wrong, one blown out food plot, something like that. They're just on edge, right? So not only is it kind of could be hurting their health standard, creating more stress when we're trying to help them rebound, it could just put a sealer on that fourth quarter. So something to watch, guys. Evening hunts only, shot plots, inside corners, something like that these bucks, maybe 75 yards, 50 yards from a food plot, something like that, that you can get in and out without blowing those situations. Guys, this one right here is probably one of the most overlooked situations. A lot of folks overlook this H2O early season and return right back to overlooking it late season. Guys, you look at, we've got a bunch of rain here. A lot of the food that wasn't palatable before has rebounded. There's a lot of moisture in some food right now in my area. Maybe you haven't got the rainfall where you're at, but something to keep in mind, guys, is that water source becomes a communal area, just like those communal scrapes, right? If that water is correctly placed in these 300-gallon water tanks that we place, those water tanks will blow up right now. Maybe not as strong as the pre-rut and the rut, but they're using them on the way to these PM water source, or these PM food sources hitting these water sources, right? So make sure that you don't overlook that. So, this time of the year, folks start looking at, how to try to save some money going into the holiday season. Guys, I would recommend keeping the cameras on your feeders, your food plots, and your minerals until the end. Your other scrapes, all the other stands that you have on the property, it's a topic we're going to go more into detail here coming forward or coming ahead. But you need to kind of take that food and that water attraction, and that's where you're going to see who made it through and also play to them great hunting strategies. The second rut here, guys, the second rut prep, 28 days. One of the biggest tips that I can give you for this time of the year, guys, is try to release that pressure and try to focus your attention on when could you have to or want to reapply some of that morning hunting strategies. So unless there is a rutting activity involved, guys, I wouldn't recommend the AM hunts. Focus on the PM. Don't implement them AM until it has something to do with rut mentality, right? Or a cause from the rut. So I think a lot of folks overlook this one. So here on the farm, guys, like I said, we peak about the 13th. But I start looking at the chain of events that have led up to this multiple years in a row, and also how do I use that planning ahead for the second rut. So here on the farm, guys, for whatever reason, the week of October 11th is weather depending one side or the other. The week of the October the 11th here on the farm there's a lot of cruising, a lot of bucks on their feet, a lot of daylighting bucks. Maybe we haven't had any real good daylighting pictures. All of a sudden, October 11th pops up, bam. And I say that for a reason, guys. It's October 11th directly connects to that November 11th, 13th, 12th, 13th, something like that, right? Why is that? Because those does that obviously maybe them does in October, they're in heat, right? They came into a heat because they cycle every 28 days. So most of them, probably a very small percentage of them actually got bred. You advance that 28 days or 30 days, let's say, bam, you're into the peak of the rut, which most of us deem the peak rut, right? So then you advance that again, another 28 days or 30 days, that puts you right into October 10th or December 10th. So October 11th, November 13th, December 10th. You make the connection on why those days are so strong, and it goes back to that 28-day heat cycle from these does. So did they get bred the first, second, third heat this time of the year when we're all in the woods? Maybe not, right? We're gonna do a video here on the podcast, kind of with a gentleman, a deer farmer, if you will. And he's going to shed some light on that, guys. I think it's a huge overlooked thing. I think a lot of folks think these does only come into heat during a 2-month window, and that's not true. They cycle every 28 days, right? But the light, the darker it is, the weather has a lot to do, the moon has a lot to do with when or how strong that heat is. But don't overlook being able to advance them days out. Do you know that particular doe got bred? No, but you can take the higher activity that you had on certain dates, from you hunting and/or camera inventory, and advance that 28 days. It's something not to overlook, guys. So if I were going to hunt a morning going into the second rut, I would advance my hunt strategy or my vacation or my travel to the farm 28 days from what I consider the peak of the rut or what you've seen to be the most activity. So what that gets us here, guys, this year, I think our late season muzzleloader hunt, our second muzzleloader hunt here in Kentucky, is going to be great because that actually opens, I believe it's on the 9th or something this year, or the 10th, somewhere around there. I'd have to look exactly, but that week is when the muzzleloader season opens up here in Kentucky. To be honest with you, it could be like the 12th or something like that. So it's going to be right in that window. I think you're going to see a lot of bucks trying to pick up those last does that didn't get bred, or these young does that are coming into their first heat cycle. These 6-month-old does that have hit that 70-pound body weight. And they are into their first heat cycle. So it's actually a great time to be in the woods, and it's maybe not as strong as the other rut, but it's something to, if you have a tag that you need to fill, don't overlook it, right? It has something to do with the rut. More activity, they're on their feet more. This one here, guys, is something that I look forward to every year. Habitat plans watch the late season and how that affects next season, right? So What I mean by that, guys, is when you're sitting in a stand, I always say this, I always enjoy my hunts, but I'm always looking for how I can make that hunt better for next year, or what I can do to correct the habitat or possibly change. Maybe you did some habitat improvements this year and you're sitting in that stand looking at that bedding area thinking, man, I think I went overboard. Just not a lot of deer using that, or I'm not seeing a bunch of does navigating through it. The bucks aren't traveling on the downwind side of it. That will be something that you need to go in before you change anything. Go in after the season ends and really look for how them does are navigating that. Sometimes it looks thicker than, to us, and they're still using it. But there's a fine line between making it too thick and having a situation where it's too thick and they can't, navigate through it and creating a predator trap or something like that we speak of. So what you need to look at, guys, is this: the way that they're navigating around. If you can actually, in the late season, because it's so much closely related to early season movements and mentality, right? Food oriented. What you do yet this season, or what you're seeing, you can change it, and that's going to affect the first hunts of next year, right? So early season, late season strategies now, you understand what they're doing. That hunt, when you're in those same stands that you're possibly hunting right now, are going to be the same stands or close to the same stands that you're going to be hunting maybe in September or the first couple of weeks of October next year. So how can you make that spot better? What do you need to do to make that stand produce? So always be watching for that stuff. So the how to and the where to gets us to this. The building part of it is this, guys. I think a lot of folks are sitting in the stand, get done with the season, and say, okay, it was either maybe you grade that season, right, good or bad. A lot of folks come out thinking, okay, it was a long 90-day season. Maybe you had one tag, maybe you had two tags, maybe you didn't fill all those. Maybe you're frustrated, and all of a sudden we start laying the blame on, the neighbors, the habitat, the food, the wind. I've heard everything already this year. I'm hearing, man, this was a hard hunting season because the winds were so different. Well, to be honest with you guys, the winds weren't any different than they were last year. What changed was we didn't take into consideration, a lot of folks don't take this year's experiences, let's say, or these lessons learned, and advance them going into next year. So we're going into next year hoping and praying that something just magically happens. We get the best, beautiful, weather days that fit our schedule, and we don't change anything. We don't change a stand location. We don't do any habitat work to make that stand location better, something like that. And then we go into next year, and all of a sudden, middle of October comes, and well, it must be the October lull, right? Must be the acorns, must be this, must be that. And all of a sudden we start pointing fingers. Like you always heard me say, guys, is if you point a finger at somebody, you've got three pointing back, depending on farming accidents, right? You've got three other fingers pointing back at you. A lot of that is so true when it comes to the habitat season. Take what you're learning this year, advance that, make some changes. Maybe like I said, maybe it's correcting some changes that you made last year. But a lot of it I see is just no habitat improvements have been done. If you're on leased property, maybe it's just as simple as moving the stand, finding that better rut funnel, finding that better pinch point, something like that, or finding a better food source, right? So take this fourth quarter strategy into play right now, guys. There's a lot of good left in the season. And to me, like I said, guys, whether you have a tag burnt or already filled or not, this one right here on the bottom is big for me because I always like to help folks, wrap their head around what happened during your season, good or bad, and make that next step better. Make that next season better from what you learned this year. So in closing, guys, we've got some spots open yet for the 2025 habitat season, client habitat season across the country. The books are filling up quick. I've actually got 3 phone calls tomorrow right here after the holiday to do, and a couple of those months are already filled, right? So I do have some spots available, and we can work together to make this situation so much better, with that information that you gained this year that you're going to be able to share with me, and I'm going to be able to look ahead and with my experience and say, okay, this is what you need to do to change that, make that situation better, so then next year you can take advantage of all this other stuff, but without changing it. I'm not saying you have to hire a consultant or hire me, but if you have another set of eyes on that with your strategy or with your experiences, a lot of times, guys, the rest of the season, the earlier portion of the season next year is a completely different season. So don't overlook these ones, guys. Like I said, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, enjoy the time with the family, everybody be safe. And hopefully if you have a tag left, take some of these tips, and you're able to fill that last remaining tag or the first tag of the season. Thanks, guys.